Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tim Hincks, and I run a production company called Expectation. But that's all you'll hear from me, because they say you should never meet your heroes. We're not testing that this afternoon, but I think, generally speaking, that probably is true. But instead of that, we have Ash Atalla with us. Let's have a round of applause for Ash. Ash is a legendary figure in British TV, and is responsible, he runs a company called Roughcut, and is responsible, it says here, 60 executive producer credits.
Yeah.
They give them away quite freely, though, don't they, to be honest? Yeah.
Nobody's
so, and a suspiciously round number, seemed to me. But let's say 60. But more importantly than all the executives is Ash has been behind some of the most famous and well-known comedy and comedy dramas of all time, including The Office, which you've probably heard of, The IT Crowd, Stath, Let's Flats, People Just Do Nothing, and recently Big Boys on Channel 4, which you may be familiar with. And we're going to see clips from those shows over the course of the next 4.5 hours. What we thought would be good, excellent. I think
delay.
In comedy, I think like the precision, adding the half to the 4 was make it funnier, right? 4.5 is better than 4. So Ash, we're going to take a journey through your career. I know it's not over yet. There's more to come. And what we wanted to say at the very beginning is, please do at any point put your hand up and ask any questions as we go along. There'll be time, we'll try and stop from time to time to ask you, but please, honestly, if you catch your eye or shout out something, ask questions. But until you do, we'll keep chatting. So Ash.
Can you tell them about the BAFTAs before we start? Otherwise,
how many, is it 60 BAFTAs?
Thanks for asking. 6, but you've made it sound shit now.
Yeah.
But six was a lot before you said
BAFTAs.
60.
Yeah. All quite a long time ago, I think. So one of the things we might establish first, just before we get into the detail of how Ash got to where he got to, is, I think you may know this, but TV is very roughly split into the buyers and the sellers. The buyers who take the programs, whether they're BBC or Amazon or Netflix, and the sellers, the people who come up with this stuff and create it, whether it's drama or whatever it happens to be, and they have to convince these people that their ideas are worth them spending money on. Ash is very firmly in the best camp of all, which is the camp of the producer and the seller. And so your life, largely, amongst other things, is trying to convince people to do the ideas you think are... How do you find that? Is that fun, Ash?
Yeah, well, the sales part of what we do is probably the most relentless and the most difficult. I think people say to me all the time, well, do you just decide what it is that you want to do next? And sure, we try to decide that, but then we really have to persuade other people. And some days I come home and I say to my girlfriend, I feel like I could be selling toilet cleaner today. I've just been in 10 different rooms persuading people to take a particular show. And I think it's one of the things in this industry that is quite brain melting in a sense, which is that all of the big hits you've ever heard of will have been in a room, in a meeting where they just nearly didn't happen, where it's an industry where everything is really much on a knife edge. There's quite a brittleness to it. And so there was a moment, we sort of call it like when the idea is at a moment where it sort of flies close to the sun and sometimes catches fire and sometimes doesn't. So essentially, developing a television show takes a couple of years. There's an awful lot of blood and sweat and creative risk, and you feel like you're sort of leading a band of people, sometimes in the sea to their death, because you're saying to people, come with us, this show's going to be great. We need writers, we need producers, we need to get this show together, and we need to take it to Netflix. That can take a year.
Yes. And
then sometimes you just get into Netflix and they go, nah. And you go, what? Huh? Yeah, well, hear me out. We got one of those from Tim, that show. So it's a kind of a process where you leave your heart on the desk a lot of the time. And my job is to really try and, you know that saying, you're a hype man. You know, you have to be your own hype man.
How do you keep that going? Because it's basically nearly always no's, isn't it, to your ideas? And the occasional yes, right?
Yep. It's a business where if you thought about the percentages of times you get a yes, you'd never leave your bed in the morning. It's probably 90% a no business. We live for the yeses, and it's my job to make those odds click a bit more in the favour of the shows that I'm involved with, or for my company and against other people's. But it's a very strange, fragile process, and a lot of it is persuasion in a room across a table.
One of the things you get used to, don't you, in a room is just picking up on the signals when you know, oh God, this isn't going to happen. And they'll say things, for example, like, we really, really want to work with you. And you think, oh God, you mean not on this project? It's such a horrible thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, but do you have other, like, just for people who may or may not have been in this, do you have other things you, in a pitch, when either that feel, you know that it's going well or badly, that tells, and, you know?
Yeah, one of the ones that's always a classic is when you might make a taster tape. I'm sure many of you in this room have made a taster tape of 3 or 4 minutes of something that you want to run, and you go in to see Amazon or Apple, and they go, yeah, I showed it to my son last night, and he didn't like it. Wait, but he's 6. So you go, yeah, he thought the ending needed a little something. So you really are in a world of dealing with human beings where, like, not only is television random, comedy is, I always say, it's the very opposite of maths. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. And so you're in a world where if you catch the correct wind on one day, you might hit a green light. But that same meeting on the next day, and it's not going to happen.
And do you think, we'll get into the detail, go to the office in a second, way back then, but do you think, now, just mentioning, do you think there's any particular reason you're in comedy? Like, is there any reason you feel like, I know why I'm in the world of comedy? It's something about my personality or something about, or is it just accident?
I think there's something about, feeling a bit of an outsider, perhaps when you're a bit younger, that make people want to go into comedy. Probably so I could get a girlfriend or something when I was about 16.
How did that go?
Really badly. And I think there's sort of something, maybe an obsession with the absurd as well. I think finding the minutiae in, like, The Office is possibly the most boring show in the whole world. Like, nothing really happens, but it's just sort of being able to find ridiculousness in the way somebody holds a stapler, or the way somebody talks to their boss, or sort of having those observations about everyday life.
Well, let's just talk about them. There can't be anyone in here who doesn't know what The Office is there? I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do if you put your hand up as though you haven't heard of it. But it's an extraordinarily, one of those shows that becomes used as a reference even still, right? And when are we talking here that it launched in the UK?
It was about 22 years ago.
Yeah, so it's still. So tell us a little bit about that process. How did that come about, Ash? And you weren't really working in comedy pretty close up, I mean...
No, I just started, and I met Stephen Merchant, who co-wrote it, and he asked me to meet his friend, who was a guy called Ricky Gervais, and Gervais had a character called Sleazy Boss, and for those of you who know David Brent, there is an element to his uncomfortable interactions with female staff, but that just became a very small part of the show. The Office was an observation that we had, that actually, when you see the way people work on television, it's highly glamorous. It's in the world of advertising, publishing, they're flying off places, they're all making a load of money. And actually, the way that most of us work in this country and around the world are under strip lightings, in grey cubicles, being vastly underpaid. And really, it's not the thing that we dreamt of doing. I mean, you're all young people in this room, you've all got hopes and dreams which are soon to be ruined. But before we get to that, there's hope. And today there is hope. But actually, we decided to sort of think, well, what happens if you show the world of British work as it actually happens? And then what happens in the world of British work? Well, not much. And one of the things is, we identified there's always a couple of types.
Right.
And the boss who lives for the weekend, the boss who wants to hang out with his staff, the boss who just wants to go to the pub and have a bloody good laugh. Come on, guys. And that is a real UK type. There's something very detailed about that. And then Martin Freeman plays Tim from The Office. I think there's always a guy or a girl at work who just rolls their eyes at how shit selling insurance is, and how that was never what they wanted to do. But they get it. They have the self-awareness to understand that. And so we built together what we thought was a depiction of actually working in the modern world in Britain. The genuine problem is that it's boring, because work is boring. So how do you show work that is boring in a way that is realistic. So it also has to be boring on television and make it not boring.
We'll show a clip in a minute to show that it wasn't boring, but before we do, just hearing you say that, like, it's perfectly possible, isn't it, to, like, in some ways in television, ideas are sort of quite cheap, aren't they? Which is to say, we can all sit there thinking, wouldn't that be fun? And television is such a practical medium in many ways. Like, you've got to be able to do something with that idea. You could have just chatted about that and then done something else. So was it something also about the people involved? Did you all have, even at that stage, defined roles about how you were going to take it on?
No. And again, I say to this room full of young faces looking back to me, it was the arrogance of youth and the stupidity of youth. I don't think Ricky, myself, and Stephen had ever made a television program before. And I look back on that moment and God, if we had known how to make television, we would have never made The Office, because we would have been too scared to have done it in that way. We did have a taster tape of Ricky playing what were the beginnings of David Brent. We had conviction, far too much, more conviction than ability, but we had a very strong sense that we knew what we wanted to do. We were quite cocky when I look back at it. I sort of would feel embarrassed if I saw me pitching the show. And then Ricky and Stephen, by the way, decided that they wanted to direct. Not only did they want to direct, but it was a deal breaker, so that if they didn't direct, they weren't going to do the show.
That really is quite cocky.
I mean, that's really cocky.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mad. Yeah. And I was like, well, I'm going to produce. And everyone's like, well, what have you all done before? And we're going, nothing, but we're doing this. But the BBC was so big, and actually The Office was quite cheap to make, that we flew under the radar. Yeah. I really don't know that would happen.
Well, I was going to ask that because we're obviously quite old, and so we quite often will say things like, you couldn't do that anymore.
Hair loss does not necesserally mean old.
I don't know about that.
We both have both.
In this light, I think it looks like I'm beginning to go a bit. But but so, like, we should never get caught in the idea that things are better then, and, you know, but was it a bit better then for something like that? Like, was it easier then, or let me put it that way, to sort of go under the radar? Or do you think you could do that now? Do you think?
You know, I think there will always be shows that come, you know, we're making something at Roughcut now that I think has come together in a pretty random way. And if you're in the room enough, you'll catch some lucky breaks. And we've caught lots of breaks that weren't lucky. I will tell you, though, about The Office. There was really, and this moment sort of haunts and tantalizes me to this day. There was a moment, and it was a sort of a 60-second period, and this sort of sounds dramatic, but there was a moment where the woman making the decision, who you will know, Jane Root at the time, who was across a big oak table, like a movie pitch, with me in my tiny wheelchair. Probably she could just see my eyes over the top of the massive table. And we showed her a clip of Ricky doing David Brent, and she watched it, and she barely cracked a smile.
Oh, God.
And she just looked to her left, to her advisor, and she said, "What do you think?" And it's like the whole room just went still. And he just went, "I like it." Now, I play that moment over and over again, because if he had gone, nah, I really think she would have gone no to the pilot, and no to the pilot would have been no to the series, and then we would have been done. And on those micro moments, they sort of say the same about love, don't they? You turn into a coffee shop and the meet cute, and you meet your boyfriend or your girlfriend. It's the sort of same in work. You sort of have those moments in work where it clicks and you get a yes, but it goes the other way too.
And I think what people maybe that other side of that table never realise, because ultimately it's just not what their world is, what's really happening there is she's saying, do you think we should set Ash up for life and give him a career that he's always wanted? And, you know, and he's going, yeah, okay. And it's like a big, big moment, isn't it? Beyond anything I mean, that's sort of one of the biggest moments in your life.
The art of pitching is like anything, which is never appear desperate, but appear in control of your facts. And I think if you end up there and you hyperventilate, and I've seen people fall to pieces in pitches, and I've done some myself that I come out of it. But actually what you should always do is have a chat. So think of it as a talk, a conversation, because the people who you're trying to sell an idea to need good ideas. This sounds like a cliche, but they need good ideas as much as we need them to take our ideas. So you do have agency and power around the table, but mainly have something good, because if you're taking in absolute shit, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, although they do sometimes go for that.
Yeah.
Let's have a little look at, there is a clip of The Office. I don't know who I'm actually talking to, but out loud, maybe we could have a clip of The Office. What do you think?
Oh, careful. What's this one? Gareth Keenan in the area. You're a new temp. Introduce yourself.
Good to see you.
Gareth Keenan, Assistant Regional Manager.
Assistant to the regional manager. Gareth's my right-hand man, immediately beneath me. Oh, as an actress said to a bishop. No, he's not. I'm not. Do you know about your car and your kung fu and everything?
Yeah, got a TR3, bought it for 1,200. Done it up, now it's worth $3,000.
Profit on that.
New
Just started.
suspension, new engine.
Just a wreck.
Respray. I've got some.
Do it himself.
Oh, what is that?
Whoa.
Dave, right, that is it.
Slow down, you move too fast. Solomon's here. All part of the job. What's going on?
Put my stapler inside a jelly again. That's the third time he's done it. It wasn't even funny the first time.
Why has he done that?
Told him once that I don't like jelly. Don't trust the way it moves.
Yeah, you showed him a weakness. He pounced. You should know about that. Oh, what is in it?
It's my stapler.
Well, don't do that. Well, eat it out. There's people starving in the world, which I hate. So, and it's a waste. So, how do you know it's yours?
Because it's got my name on it in Tipex.
Yeah, don't eat it now. In chemicals.
Right, you can be my witness. Give him an official warning.
How do you know it was me?
It's always you. Can't you discipline him?
Oh, kinky. No, the thing about practical jokes is you've got to know when to stop as well as start, and now's the time to stop putting Gareth's personal possessions in jelly, all right?
Gareth, it's only a trifling matter.
Here we go. We're always like this.
You should put him in custody.
He's going to fit in here. We're like Vic and Bob, aren't we? And one extra one. Oh, God.
Yeah, I'm more worried, really, about damage to company property, that's all.
Trifling. I'm just trying to think of other desserts to do.
One of the reasons, I was worried no one was going to laugh for the first. Did you feel that? Do you feel a bit of fear there?
I've always felt that about The Office, because it's barely funny, but it's...
Yeah. But one of the reasons it feels in some ways so familiar is because it's been copied so much, and that's sort of the way of the mockumentary thing. Almost you wouldn't even announce anymore, right? Because it's just become an accepted way of doing comedy. But at the time, again, were you aware, like, this is really, like, slightly radical, did that?
Yeah, it came out of the world of reality television,
Right.
really. It shows, I guess, Big Brother, you know, it came like where real people would be on television, and that would become interesting to people, which was actually quite a new phenomenon. People forget that. And so the premise behind The Office was a camera crew had gone to film a real office. And we used to speak a lot about that at the time. Why are the camera crew there? Should our characters look at the camera? How much would they be aware that they're going to be on television? But actually, as the show became successful, the device of the mockumentary became less important.
Right.
And the characters and the show itself became the thing. But it has been, the comedy of awkwardness, I think, came really from The Office.
Right,
to
yeah.
that level, anyway.
No, I agree. And just on the sort of way you organise. So you've got this idea which suddenly becomes, you know, a commissioned series, and so it's got money behind it. So it goes from being some mates sort of mucking around with it. Did you as a producer, like, what do you think the skills are you have to bring to sort of, because people are running off in all sorts of directions, there'll be creative difference. I mean, yeah, tell us a bit about that process of actually getting down to making the thing. And
Yeah, I mean, as a producer or any of you in this room, whatever discipline you end up doing, you end up having to bring, I think the trick is bringing people with you along whatever it is you're trying to do. And I think the worst thing you can have is be split by, there's so many opinions in our business. Whatever you do, there's so much noise. There are so many people telling you to try this, to try that. I think it'd be funny if we did this. Why don't you use that actor? How about this set? And so there's an immense amount of background noise, whatever you do. And I think creative clarity, I would almost say a touch of creative arrogance is really important. Because I think you can really end up in a mess if you listen to too many people. So one of the things that we did, you can imagine we had a lot of advice coming into us for The Office, and we really had a lot of people telling us to not do it that way.
Right.
Because that wasn't the way that television was made. And I think we really had to hold our nerve. Now, it's easy to tell a story like this because the show ended up being a success. But I have also held my nerve in shows that haven't gone as well. And I'm just always glad to, and it's my job to try and provide some clarity and direction, and I guess creative comfort, which is that we're doing this, we all know what we're trying to do, there's a reason we're on this course, let's stay here.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a collaborative game and you get pulled this way and that way, but know what you want to do, because if you don't know what you want to do in television, you get ripped from limb to limb.
I mean, not literally.
No, I have been literally.
Bloody hell. And do you feel like, but what about the thing of just getting down to sort of slightly, like, let's take a writer, it may not even be The Office, but you can get a writer who brings you a brilliant idea, maybe even a brilliant script, and that is the foundation of or can be the foundation of a show. You think, well, we've got something magical here, but that writer can also, like anyone, go off at a bit of a tangent, right? And you think, actually, I'm not sure. So you've got to manage that creative process. You've got to be true to the fact that they originated it. How do you find that, like that process of just as you say, bringing people with you? Because it's not always easy, is it?
No, it's not always easy. And actually, you talk The Office was very unknown people, but also in our business, we deal with a lot of famous people. We deal with a lot of rich people. We deal with a lot of egos. Yeah. We deal with superstars, stars, etc. And guess what? They're not always good people. And they're not.
Name names.
Huh?
Name names.
Chris O'Dowd is a good friend of mine. Look, you would expect people who work in our business to be unruly and difficult. And that can be exhausting, and I've had run-ins with major names, but that's not preferable, the preferable position. But also you sort of want to, it's almost like having a child, you also want to sometimes protect people against mistakes. Yes. You kind of go, believe me, I've made that mistake. I died on the cross so you don't have to. Please don't do that. Here's my workings out. Here's the evidence of why it might not work. But sometimes that happens a lot. And then there is a phrase, isn't there, which is, we've fallen out for creative differences, and there's a reason that phrase exists.
And in a minute, we're going to talk about the IT crowd, which is, in a way, for you, is like the next big thing. But just coming out and thinking, we're celebrating some amazing shows here, but if you're like anyone else in the industry, like you'll have more misses than hits, right? I mean, we all do, So. Yeah. And I, for example, was responsible for Don't Scare the Hare, the game show that involved a robot hare that you which amazingly didn't work.
Can't believe people haven't heard of it.
It's really odd that you haven't heard from it, and it didn't work on BBC One on Saturday night, but it was an unmitigated disaster. And there's loads of them, and you'll have that. But can you think, I mean, you don't have to name anything, Ash, unless you want to, but I'm sort of wondering how you handle the let's call it failure or whatever. What's that like when things go the other way?
I'll tell you a show. We did a show called Clone. No.
Wow. Should we just talk about The Office? Maybe that's easier.
Go back to The Office. No, we did a show called Clone, which is probably the sort of most, I say it's a high-profile failure only because I think about it sort of endlessly. It's true.
We've got a clip of it, actually.
I buried the tapes. The BBC actually buried the tapes for me. Sometimes you put
Tell
together...
us what it was. Jenny, I actually don't remember that.
No, you won't remember it.
What kind of thing was it?
It was on BBC Three. It was written by a guy called Adam Chase, who was one of the main writers of Friends. I had just done The Office. Adam was riding high on Friends. This is Friends in the late 90s, when it was just a juggernaut. Yeah. So Adam was sort of walking on water in LA, and I'd just come off the back of The Office.
What can possibly go wrong?
And what possibly went wrong was everything went wrong. And we hired a big star. It's a guy called Jonathan Pryce. He's a really lovely man. Was terribly miscast by us, not him. He did him, and just everything about it refused to gel. And it's a very painful. It's a really painful experience going through, because making a TV show takes so long. It's not like making dinner. Like if you're spaghetti bolognese shit and you just put it in the bin and tomorrow you'll make something else. It takes like a year to make. So if it's going wrong, I felt it going wrong in the middle, you just go, could I just get everyone together and go, let's stop it, because it's awful. But actually you sort of go through this quite slow motion period of it coming out, and it was awful. And it's public as well, what we do. It's like it's on television. It's not like when I have a bad day at the office, it's like there's a TV show on that's really not good. So, you know, your dad sees it and he goes, whoa, I don't know what you're doing, son. I go, thanks, Dad, for the support. And
sounds like you've processed it really well, actually.
yeah, processed it really well. But I think my point is those things come along and
But do you, sorry to interrupt, but it's a really interesting thing you said about you felt in the middle of this particular one. Anyway. Do you feel like sometimes you just know early, you know, you just get a sense, and because we've also would have been involved in shows where it has this moment, and it's like, oh, it's okay, we pulled it away, and it saved itself.
Yeah.
But so what is that? Is that just random chance?
I think one in every. I think if you're good at our job is. I say it's random. It's not. You have to be good at it. You have to have an instinct for it. I hope I'm good at what I do, and therefore you bend the odds to your favour. So if a show might be 50-50, it's my job to bring it 80-20 at home in terms of it hopefully being a hit. You catch a bad one now and then, or you make bad decisions, and I'm very much responsible for that. And you cannot pull it out of the fire. Like the nosedive is relentless.
It's the worst feeling, isn't it?
What you just want to do when you look back on your deathbed at your career, you just want to make sure that they were few and far between. Otherwise, I guess you get kicked out of the business, right?
Yeah. Not on your deathbed, I don't think, but...
This is my deathbed stage.
I think it's going really well. Anyone got any questions? We can take any questions if anyone has them.
Hello, I'm Thomas. I study film and television at the University of Bedfordshire, and I was wondering, do you have any techniques or setups in order to reliably create comedy?
Sorry, I missed the middle bit, the tech, but just before...
Any setups or techniques to create? You mean in terms of the filming of it?
Or the ideas?
Well, yeah, I guess the ideas, really. Because some concepts were going to be funnier than others.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. Thanks, Thomas. I think a lot of the time, if I spot something that feels like it's changing in society, it feels like there's something sort of new to be said around there, actually, which will take us nicely into the...
We're going to take another...
IT. Well, let me just answer Thomas properly.
Yeah.
I do think, Thomas, every now and then you sort of spot something that's happening in society and you kind of go, I don't know that has been particularly well depicted on television. There's a shift happening here. People's attitudes are... So I guess the example of the last few years would be gender, people's relationship to gender and gender fluidity. Now, I'm not going to make a comedy about the trans debate because I'm not that stupid. But you will see those issues, right, much more and more in the world of comedy and drama because there's been a big sort of shift in society. So down the let's sort of call it down the back of the sofa, you'll sort of find the gaps that haven't necessarily been served yet. And I'll talk about that when we go into the...
Yeah, we'll come on to the IT part, which is a really good cue, except that I asked for questions and now we're going to take them, and that's good. Yes, at the back. Thank you.
So I really didn't know how to phrase this question, but it was briefly touched upon in your term of creative arrogance. So when you mentioned about maybe we wouldn't have as much conviction or we wouldn't be as cocky if we knew what we did or we knew what... You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How do you keep a healthy balance of keeping the conviction and the cockiness and the passion that you have while having a healthy amount of self-awareness and skepticism and the criticism that you get? How do you get a good balance and how do you balance them both and stay on top? If that makes sense?
That's such a good question.
It's a really good question. It's an industry that continuously humbles you, I can tell you that. And so the day that you find yourself, I won't say what it is, but we've just had a good run at Roughcut at my company, and this weekend we just sort of took a body blow on a particular thing, and it's just a business that knows how to bring you down just when you feel you are invincible. But I think it's a personality thing. I think you have to go about your job with humility, and there are definitely quite a lot of people around me I do have a girlfriend now, and she tells me.
Yeah,
I did eventually get one after 30 years.
Yeah, I've got to say that's not what she says. But anyway.
And there are people around you who keep you straight. But the business itself does that for you, I promise you, because we deal with a lot of no's and we deal with a lot of sort of tricky situations.
By the way, you're assuming he does get the balance. I mean, he's actually a nightmare. It's not
Kind of.
But there's also an interesting thing, isn't there, that even success, at some point, all TV shows go to die somewhere, and they could even run for years, and then someone will say, "Oh, that thing, we should take it off now." And you think, "But that's been on for 20 years."
Yeah.
Like it's ultimately a business that you have to keep renewing and refreshing.
Tim and I were talking before we came in. We have a friend of ours who works at Netflix, and he's a commissioning editor there. And if you think about how many people in this world pitch to Netflix, and in the old days there were film stars and there were TV people, and now all the big movie stars do television. So if you think about all the hundreds of thousands of projects globally that are coming into an organization like Netflix, and all the big Hollywood stars are attached to them, they can't do them all. So my friend said to me, "Ash, if you would see the famous people that I have to say no to," and he's like, "Who am I?" I said, "I'm just on a Zoom with Nicole Kidman from LA, and she's got this thing, and we're not going to do it." And so it's a business where the maths, there are hundreds of thousands of projects and like hundreds of slots. So just the maths doesn't go. So a lot of big names are cut to size.
And there's a question over there. Oh, good, we're getting lots of questions, so I don't know if the person with the mic can... Yeah.
Right, hi, I'm Maria from Westminster,
Hi.
first year. So the question is, I think I'm the representative of a Gen Z kind of time. And I didn't phrase the question as well, but I want to raise the topic of cancelling culture. Where is this thin line nowadays between dark joke or just being a dark humor or being appropriate, inappropriate, and between being cancelled for a joke?
I've got a very straightforward line on this stuff, which is I get asked this question a lot around cancel culture and the kind of the refrain where you can't say anything anymore, so how do you make comedy? I just don't believe that most comedy exists anywhere close to that line. I think it's a fallacy that comedy is there to sort of push boundaries of tastes and public perception. You can do that sometimes, but I think if you watch most of the shows I've made, People Just Do Nothing, Stath, Let's Flats, they're not shows that are pushing boundaries of taste. That we're there to be funny. I'm not there to necessarily cause controversy. I'm not there to try and ignite a debate about gender or race or disability. That's not my sole purpose. Every now and then in a show, an issue like that will come up, but I can tell you it's on my desk for about 3% of the time. Most of the time, I'm trying to create shows that people in this room want to watch, and that's not necessarily by shock or being close to what that cancel culture line. So the answer to your question is most of the time it's not anything that concerns my day-to-day job. And every now and then a joke will come up or a scene or a character and I'll go, yeah, I can see that that's going to offend some people and some people will like it and some people will write letters to us and think it's great and others not. And sometimes I'll just go, I don't want to do it. I don't want that to become the thing of this show because it's not important enough. And other times I'll think, yeah, we're going to do this. We know intellectually why this is important to the show. I'm ready for this, and it's important enough to me to see it through, as difficult or painful as that might be.
Feels to me like a lot of your comedy also has a sort of warmth to it, right?
Yes.
Which not all comedy does, right? But it's an amazing thing when you can combine the warmth with stuff that just makes you laugh out loud. And are you conscious of that, Ash, or is that just who you are and that's just what appeals to you?
I think the most powerful comedy is when it moves you as well, and there's something rather old-fashioned about joke. It's not how we speak, it's not how the human nature works, and we all have moments of pathos and feeling and romance and jealousy and human emotion, and I like the shows that I make to show that as well, and warmth is a part of that.
I think there was another question. Yeah, I don't know where, sorry, I'm not sure where the mic has got to.
So you talked before about getting into the room pitching, and there's so many people who are famous who are pitching now, and there's kind of a big disconnect from me and those type of people. So how would you suggest getting into the room, especially when you don't really have connections like that?
Well, depending on what you do in this business, the difficult thing about this business is saying to people that you really need to be very good at what you do. It's like highly competitive. And so I don't know what any of you do in here. I'm sure some of you are writers, actors. And I would just say the world of television and film is in some ways like really unfair, random. There are no qualifications necessary. Sometimes good shows get turned down and bad shows get commissioned. But the only thing that you can control is being the best you can be at whatever it is your discipline. And if I think about writing and good writing, which is at the heart of what I do, when I read a script that is exceptionally good, I do believe, with all the problems that our business has, there is a meritocracy to it, and that somebody who can act exceptionally well, somebody who's a really brilliant DOP, somebody who's an amazing writer, I think the cream does rise to the top if you are persistent, but the key is to be really good. Then the question is who judges whether you're good or not, because it's not like you have to pass an accountancy exam, and that's where our business gets complicated, because it's opinion rather than exams. Like my father's a doctor, it's very easy for him, he just did the exams, passed them, became a doctor. Those structures don't exist for our industry, and that's what makes it complicated and sometimes unfair.
In the fast-moving world of television, sometimes we have to take executive decisions, rip up running orders, crazy stuff like that. I'm now doing that.
Okay.
And what I'd like to do is, if we can, is to show a clip of people just do nothing. Again, I'm not exactly sure who I'm talking to. I seem to be talking to you in the middle. Sure it's nothing to do with you. Someone behind the scenes. Could we see a clip of people just do nothing?
Let's do this. Good morning, party pack. Good morning, party pack. Yeah. Spot on. If you go to a promoter and you give him a rider, you can't just write, oh, I want Bear Skunk now, yeah? You've got to disguise it somehow, do you know what I mean?
Bob Marley party package, innit?
Exactly. As soon as you write that, they know what time it is.
Feel free to sit on the boxes.
Feel free to sit down, yeah.
Create a bit all for us on the house.
Oh,
Rider sorted out, all by the manager.
A wig? What is it?
It's the Bob Marley party pack.
Bob Marley party pack? That's a code word. Where's the fucking skunk?
There's like these spliffs.
You didn't get... That's what I meant. As a manager of Craft FM, I expect you to listen to me.
Cheers, brother.
These are special artists, mate. Okay, mate? Good. Boys, all sorted. All sorted.
Grinder.
That is quite funny, actually.
In a way, almost going back to the question we had over there about when you spot, so you say whatever you like about this, Ash, in terms of how it came about, but I wondered if one of the starting points was you thinking there's something going on and want to reflect it. And so how did people do nothing came up? Because it became a huge thing, right? Massive nation.
Yeah, and I think I hope they're a really good story for people in this room. They had no qualifications. They could barely act. I mean, that's sort of what they're like. So they're sort of hardly acting. One of them, for any of you who watch the show, Steve, who is the biggest drug addict in the show, off camera, is actually the brains behind the operation. He wrote a lot of it. And I saw a clip of it. They were also trying to find me because of The Office and the mockumentary angle. And I don't think I've ever been as certain of anything in my life. I just remember watching, they used to put bits on YouTube, and I remember just being so convinced that there was something there, like very raw, needed so much work. But I just had a very strong sense of that show being something that reflected modern Britain, the world of the MC, the sort of the culture of people pretending to be more urban than they are.
Yeah.
I guess began a bit with Ali G, going back to that. But I just thought there's something in these kind of West London white boys who speak in patois and who rap poorly. And do you know what? That was a show, I sent a clip of it to the BBC. And I sent it, and I was literally looking at my mobile phone, waiting for it to ring and them to go, where do we send the money to? This is this is a surefire winner. And they actually initially sort of turned it down.
Right.
And I just remember thinking, like, it's almost like you're speaking a different language. And then we went through quite a long process of really trying to persuade them. It was Carl Warner initially.
Was it?
Yeah. So it's something that for me felt irrefutable that it was going to be good. I had this almost religious conviction around it that I have every now and then. I can't explain, and I wasn't going to not make it.
And that's amazing. And I think what you've said there about, which people in the room may be interested in, so in a sense it came to you not exactly raw because they'd edited it, but it became from sort of YouTube and for people who had no contacts with the industry, or is
No,
that how do they literally get in touch? How did that process work? From what?
I think that is hard to answer your question. I feel an enormous amount of sympathy with people who are trying to get their work read, trying to get in the door. It's really not easy, and production companies like mine, to make life even worse, we just don't have the bandwidth to be able to respond. So you will find on our website and all production company websites, as if life isn't unfair to an extent, we'll even go, we don't accept unsolicited material. And of course, you can find our address online, and you can send us wherever you want, including a bomb if we don't read your script. Don't, but you could, example.
Or maybe read the script.
Maybe I'll read the script, yeah. But so you know where we are. It's not easy to get meetings because lots of stuff are pouring in. I'll give you one bit of practical, I think, good advice here, which is that if you're trying to get a meeting with somebody at the company, don't always contact the boss of the company. Contact people who work at the company who are quite maybe more easily flattered. So watch the shows of a company like ours. Watch who produces Big Boys or the producer of People Just Do Nothing. I'm always amazed at how little unsolicited emails they get from people who kind of go, I'm really amazed. I get, like, a lot. I don't have the time, nor do I, as you can all see, nor do I need my ego massaging. But if you write somebody who works at my company and go, really enjoyed Big Boys, I really like that other thing that you did, wonder if I could have a coffee and have some advice, you'll find them much more amenable, and I think that's a much better way in. The second thing is have something really good attached, because if you send it to enough people and to enough agents, I really believe, on all your behalves, I really believe it'll eventually see the light of day.
And do you mean there could be so is video, like in the case of People Just, it was video, effectively,
Video is
right?
great.
Yeah.
Like, video is great. You don't need our permission to make a taster tape. You don't need a production company or the BBC or Channel 4 to tell you to put something together. You guys, with the generation of people making their own content is 15 years ago. Do that. We no longer are the gatekeepers that we once were. We can help you get into the rooms of the BBC, but to do that, you have to get into our room. And to do that, it's helpful to have something to show. And present your work well. Like, we get scripts that are just, it sounds like an old dad talking, but make your scripts look nice. Think of what the poster might be. Give it a good title. Have a deck, visuals. Make something arresting.
One of the interesting things which I think you mentioned it earlier, but just hearing you say that you went to the BBC with people, I'm going to call it People, that's probably what you called it. Is that what you called it?
PJBN.
PJBN. What? Yeah. And you went to the BBC, and I was suddenly thinking, I don't know whether I'm right about this with the audit, but like, it's sort of, what does that even mean, the BBC? Because obviously BBC is this way. And I guess I was just reflecting on this notion that some people feel if for example, you thought that's an interesting script or an idea, they might think, oh, I've finally arrived. It might be true, but you as a producer have to then go to these monolithic and try and sell and against the numbers that we've talked about. You know, the odds are against you, and there's still a huge amount to go. And so what you do is when you say the BBC, you're talking about specific relationships, aren't you, with individuals who you might have worked with in the past? Just how does that bit work?
Right, so I don't know how much of this actual commissioning process you guys know, but every broadcaster, Channel 4, BBC, will have, we call them genres. So you'll have a documentaries team, you'll have a factual team, you'll have a comedy team, you'll have a drama team. They are groups of 6 or 7 people, and it's their job to be the gatekeepers for Channel 4, the BBC, of that genre. So somebody who does drama, she will never give notes on a documentary. It's not her speciality. So it's our job at Roughcut to have those relationships with the people in those departments. And that's what we do for you as young creatives. If you come to us and you kind of go, I'd like to get this on television, we know how to do that, and it's my job. I mean, I go to breakfast and lunch 3 times a week. We have to keep in and around these teams. My producers are talking to their number 2s and 3s. So it's a real relationship business. You could call that old-fashioned, you could call it cliquey, you could call it a stitch-up. You know, all of those words may apply, may be true.
You could call it an old-fashioned cliquey stitch-up.
You could call it a cliquey stitch-up. You could call it a cartel. You could call it all sorts of things. All of those things are a monopoly. All of those things are semi-true. But nevertheless, that is the process of how this works. And I suppose they would look at a company like Roughcut and kind of go, well, we've got it. Let's not go on about my massive failure, Clone. I don't know why you all keep bringing it up. But beyond Clone, you could go, this is a company that get it right more often than they get it wrong. So if Ash comes in with a project and he's banging the table, he's sometimes right. So we'll get a fair hearing and we have a chance. So that's what production companies do in the days of you guys also making your own content.
And it's true, isn't it, that a bit like the question over there, that some people will say, yeah, but it's not fair because you're friends with the head of comedy or whatever. But the truth is, you're friends with that person because of the experiences you've had and the hits. That's how it kind of works, isn't it? And it feels, therefore, as you say, partly like a clique, but also there's a reason for how close you are to them.
Yeah, I'm afraid it's sort of my job to be friends with the head of comedy at those places, and in the same way that any buyer seller relationship, whatever it is you're selling, widgets, cars, whatever it is, the people who sell cars are close to the people who manufacture cars, and that's the way this world works. And television, let's be under no illusions, is part ability and then part luck and then part relationships, and there's a huge dose of luck. You know that story I told you about The Office and that key moment of it happening or not happening. There's a huge dose of luck. So I don't want to like anyone to leave here and thinking it's anything other than a business where nuance and personal relationships are hugely important.
The final clip we're going to see is Big Boys, which is your latest hit, and there's a series 2 in the works. And I know we've got 2 clips controversially, so do you know which one you want, or do you mind? What do you think?
I guess the first one will be teed up. I don't want the person who's running the clips.
Yeah, that's very thoughtful of you. Shall we play?
Just trying to help.
Can we play whatever clip you've got of Big Boys? Thank you.
I really do miss him, Mum.
2 years tomorrow. Mad.
I'd often try not to cry aloud. Not because I want it to be macho, just because my cry sounds like Jimmy Carr's laugh.
Come on, this is a happy moment. Get to know that Danny lad. Seems nice.
He looks like a take me out contestant.
Well, I'll keep my light on for him. Oh, hope you meet a lovely girl here. Be nice for you to be the one with a girlfriend for once, wouldn't it?
When I was 9, Mum winced watching Todd Grimshaw kiss Nick Tilsley and Corrie, so I daren't say.
Mum, will people think I fancy Malala if I hang her above my bed instead?
Nah, poor girl's got enough on her plate without you fancying her.
Oh,
shit, that's a window. Sorry about that, honey.
Sorry, Jack's mum.
Don't worry, we've all got to de-stress somehow. Oh, well, look, we'll have you round to us for dinner sometime. Do you like lasagna?
Yeah, I love lasagna.
So I realise I didn't do it, but you probably know it, but I didn't do an intro, but you can talk about it, Ash. But that came, one of the things to say about that is it came, I think, from a writer this time, who brought you an idea or a script, or you...
Yeah, and I think this is, we sort of speak about shows being of their time, and I'd go back to this sort of great outpouring and readjustment that planet Earth has had to sexuality and any kind of neurodivergence and all of the other hot button issues that we deal with at the moment. Jack Rook, who writes this show, came out at university. It was about 8 or 9 years ago, and as he tells me, even 8 or 9 years ago, it felt quite a big deal to come out as gay at university, and he had also lost his father, so just before he went to university. It's a real personal story, and I think nowadays in the world looking for truth and authenticity, these are the kind of stories that kind of get made a lot more. And so this Big Boys was a very different challenge. It was about sort of making a story that has a huge amount of poignancy and pathos, and as well, when you're sort of sitting around the table with the writer who in real life had lost his father, you have to deal with things in a very sort of delicate way. And I think what's emerged is a really tender, truthful show. I think that hits some very sort of silly, broad comedy moments, but also moments where I'm in the edit and I'm like in tears. There's some stuff coming up in series 2 that we've just shot, which is really sad, but we're immensely proud of it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And again, that was something. How did it come to you, Ash, as an idea from Jack?
Jack did an Edinburgh show.
Okay.
He did a show called, I think it was called Good Grief.
Okay.
Playing words in Edinburgh about 5 or 6 years ago, and we saw it, and we thought, I wonder if that could be turned into something. And the usual process: how do you turn a life experience into a script? Can Jack write? Does he have the ability? And then, can we persuade anyone else? It's a weird one. You phone up somebody and go, it's a show about a man's dad dying, and then him going to university and coming out, and people go, well, that doesn't sound very funny. I go, well, it's not just funny, and we don't want it to be just funny. But yeah,
But that's one of the things, isn't it? Which, in some ways, I feel like the streamers have led the way in this notion that there's not a comedy and a drama separation, right? There's no sort of distinction, or is that
right? And we didn't show the IT Crowd clip now, but the IT Crowd is sort of thought to be a show of its time because it's sort of joke, and there's something quite old-fashioned about. It's called old-fashioned sitcoms, really, sort of studio sitcoms. You hear the laughter. It's sort of real laughter, but people think it's canned laughter. And it's sort of how they made comedies, really, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, or 60s, really, it goes back to. And that, as a genre, has kind of fallen away and faded away. And I think a lot of you in this room would go, well, yeah, it just feels a bit naff, really, because it's not how real life is. And so that's really about how tastes have changed. And when we made the IT Crowd, it would have been impossible to get a story about a man's father dying commissioned. And that's about tastes and society and patterns moving. And it's absolutely the job of me and television and my company and Tim and all the broadcasters to roll with those trends, or indeed set them. Sounds quite pompous, doesn't it?
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Should we... Now, we've got 6 minutes and 15 seconds left, because I've got a clock here, because the RTS is incredibly professional in the way that it looks after you. So we're going to take some questions, but should we see a bit of the IT Crowd? Do you want to see
let's show
should we see
clip.
it? Because everyone loves telly, right? Let's see an IT Crowd. It's a funny one to end on, because, as you said, it's sort of, in some sense, it's quite old-fashioned, but it's funny, though.
Yeah.
Brilliant show. Let's see a bit of that, and then we'll take some questions.
What is it?
This, Jen, is the internet.
What?
That's right.
This is the internet. The whole internet.
Yep. I asked for a loan of it so that you could use it in your speech.
It's so small.
That's one of the surprising things about it.
Hang on. It doesn't have any wires or anything.
It's wireless.
Oh, yes, everything's wireless nowadays, isn't it? So I can really use it in my speech. What if someone needs it?
Oh, no. People will still be able to go online and everything. It'll still work.
Oh, good.
I tell you, you present this to the shareholders and you will get quite a response.
Can I touch it? Ooh. It's so light.
Of course it is, Jen. The internet doesn't weigh anything.
No, of course it doesn't.
Hey! It
What is Jen doing with the internet?
Ma said I could use it for my speech.
Are you insane? What if she drops it?
I won't drop it. I'll look after it.
No, Jen. No, this needs to go straight back to Big Ben.
Big Ben?
Yeah, it goes on top of Big Ben. That's where you get the best reception.
Right, I promise I won't let anything happen to it.
No, Jen, I'm sorry, but the elders of the internet would never stand for it.
No, Roy, I spoke to the elders of the internet not 1 hour ago. I told them about Jen winning Employee of the Month, and they were so impressed that they wanted to do whatever they could to help.
Wait a minute. The elders of the internet. The elders of the internet know who I am. You've got to let me have
No, Jen, I'm sorry. It's just too risky.
it. Oh, please, Roy.
Oh. Well, Moss, has it been completely demagnetized?
By Stephen Hawking himself. Who sent his congratulations, by the way.
Well, if it's okay with the Hawk...
So, can I have it?
You can.
Oh, don't forget your speech.
Oh, thank you.
Slowly.
One of the truly most terrifying things about doing this is that someone's prepared the clips for you, and sometimes they do them a bit long, and you felt that was long.
Yeah, I felt that was too long.
But we love IT Crowd, and we're going to give it a round of applause. Right. We have 2 minutes 30 for a question or two. Yes, down here.
I noticed that these days comedies are not that funny, and the thing.
Thank you, Ash, for that.
Wow.
Thank you. Yeah.
No. I loved everything that we've seen today, and I think like simple characters, good setups, and I feel like one of the main things that are different is the fact that you feel empathy, and that what makes you kind of laugh at it. So why do you think? I feel like a lot of characters these days are flat, and I was just wondering, as somebody in that industry, why is that? Yeah, that's it.
No, good question.
Wow, she's slagged off the whole industry.
Yeah. I like to think of that as Ash's legacy, to be honest, that comedy's not as fun as it used to be.
I wish the IT Crowd clip had been longer. It's really interesting noticing, I think, of all the clips we showed, there was the least laughter for that clip. And I really come back to it being, I think, a moment of its time. I think characters who are just doing jokes are, by their nature, kind of quite flat. They're there to serve a gag. And I think characters that feel real and more 3D are I think, what you would call a bit more rounded. If you're asking me why characters aren't very funny in other shows, I can only speak to my shows, and I know they're good because I told myself that, and I'm sure of that. But look, it's a really tough genre. I always say, it's almost impossible to make your friend laugh in the pub, let alone making millions of people laugh on television. It's almost impossible, and I think of all the genres, for sure, the failure of comedy is one of the highest as well. And the other thing about comedy is when people don't like it, they're like, oh man, did you see that show on TV last night? It was so shit. People are so angry. And they never go, did you see that documentary? It was so... People just go, yeah, it was bad.
Also, randomly go into a library and pick a book, it will be terrible.
Yeah.
But people don't say standard of books these days.
Yeah. But I do understand people say, why do shows that aren't very good get on television? And that's another whole session. Another question.
My name's Natalie. I wanted to ask, you were talking about how comedy is kind of like difficult, and I've been told a lot that comedy is like harder than drama. I was wondering if like making comedic TV shows and like media, if that's something like a talent where you can like chip away at it and like mold it, or if it's just something that you just fall into kind of thing.
Excellent question. I do think you have to have an instinct, some instinct, like we will all know people in this room who are just like not funny, and you come away from thinking, oh my God, they're so dull. I would advise those people to not go into comedy. So you need something in the first place, but you can certainly learn your craft and you can develop and chisel. I sometimes give the example of, you'll all remember the X Factor, you know, and Simon Cowell sitting on the panel, and somebody will come along and sing on it, and you'll just go, oh my God, please don't stop. And Simon would say, like, if you want to do this for a career, stop. Like, do it as a hobby, but just please don't make your whole life being about you being in a pop band, because you're going to wreck your life and you're not going to do it. And I feel like that with some people who want to be in all creative endeavors. I'm like, sometimes just please, like, enjoy it, watch shows, but it might not be for you. And that's okay, because I'm not going to be an architect, and we don't all have to do the same thing. And sometimes you see people really sweating it out, and you kind of go, I want to Simon Cowell this. I want to put somebody out of their misery and go, try something else, because it's only one job. But also people who have a raw talent, like the People Just Do Nothing team, you can grow, you can learn, and there are tricks to what we do. Like, there are learnings.
What a brilliant way to end. And I'm just going to say, let's all show our appreciation for Ash Atalla for a brilliant hour.
Thank you.